My son came home to sell my farm before I was dead. He didn't ask, didn't ease into it, didn't pretend this was anything but a decision already made. He laid the papers on the kitchen table and said, "We need to get out while we still can." That was how it started. Just like that. No build-up. No warning. I stayed standing by the doorway for a second, looking at him, trying to figure out when he stopped being my son and started being the man who would come back to close my life down like a business that wasn't working. "Sit down, Dad," he said, still looking at the numbers. He said. He slid one of the papers toward me. A clean aerial photo. Red lines drawn around everything I'd spent 40 years holding together. "I talked to a broker," he said. "If we list now, we're still ahead of the next tax increase." I didn't touch the paper. I asked. He exhaled, already tired of me. "Yes, because if you don't deal with it, I will have to." That landed harder than he meant. I could hear it in his voice right after, but he didn't take it back. "You planning on burying me first?" I said. "Or selling before that?" He finally looked up. "I'm trying to keep you from dying out here." I'm still standing. "Barely," he said, and this time he didn't soften it. "You're 72. You're working like you're still 50. That's not strength." I leaned back, arms crossed. "And selling fixes that. It fixes the part where this place takes everything you have left." There it was. Not money. Not really. Something deeper. I looked at him. "You don't want the farm?" "No," he said. "I don't." "Then what is this?" He paused just for a second. "This is me not wanting to watch you lose the rest of your life to something that stopped working a long time ago." That one stuck, because part of me knew what he meant. "This fed you," I said. "Yeah," he nodded, "and it took a lot too." I didn't answer. He leaned forward. "You should have sold years ago." I felt that one. Not anger. Something quieter. "Your mother was alive years ago." "Exactly," he said. "She was tired, Dad. She just never said it the way I am." My jaw tightened. "You don't get to speak for her." "I lived in that house, too." Silence again. The kind that's been building for years. "You think I kept her here?" I said. "I think you never gave her a real way out." That was the first time I stood up. The chair scraped loud against the floor. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Then tell me I'm wrong." I didn't, because I didn't trust what would come out if I started. He shook his head. "This is what you do. Every time it gets real, you shut down." "No," I said, quieter. "This is me not saying something I can't take back." He laughed once, but there was nothing funny in it. "I'm already there." That hit, harder than anything else. I turned away, stared at the sink at nothing. "You think I don't feel it?" I said. "You think I don't wake up some mornings wondering how much longer I can keep this going?" "Then why keep going?" he asked. Simple question. No easy answer. I stayed quiet too long. He nodded like that told him everything. "Because if you stop," he said slowly, "you don't know who you are anymore." I turned back. "That's not your decision to make." "No," he said, "but it becomes mine when you can't anymore." There it was. The real fear. Not selling. Not money. The end of control. The end of being needed. "You already left," I said. "Don't come back now and decide how this ends." His face hardened. "I came back because I still care. Or because you don't want the mess later." "You think this is about money?" he snapped. "I don't need your land. I need you to stop killing yourself for it." We stood there, both breathing harder now, neither of us backing off. "Explain it to me," he said. "Explain why this is worth everything." I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Not because there was nothing there. Because I couldn't put it into words he would believe. That was the truth I hadn't said out loud before. "I'll stay the night," he said finally, voice flat. "We'll talk in the morning. Do what you want." He hesitated, then turned and walked down the hall. I listened to his footsteps fade, then the door close. For a second, I thought about calling him back, saying something different. I didn't. I walked outside instead. The air hit colder than I expected. I crossed the yard without thinking, boots landing where they always had, and ended up in the barn. Same smell, same sounds, same life. I moved through it slow, past things I'd fixed, things I hadn't, things I never would. That's when I saw it again. The old cedar trunk. My father's. I hadn't opened it in years. Not because I forgot, because I remembered exactly what he said. "Don't open it until the day you can't hold the land on your own anymore." I stood there a long second. Marcus's words still in my head. "You're not going to be able to do this much longer." I let out a breath. Maybe that day's already here, I muttered. I knelt down, slower than I used to, ran my hand over the lid. Inside the house, my son was waiting for me to admit something I wasn't ready to admit. Out here, I was starting to realize I might not have a choice anymore. I lifted the lid. The hinges made a low, tired sound when I lifted the lid, like something that hadn't been disturbed in a long time wasn't sure it wanted to be. I didn't rush it. I just held it open and looked inside for a second, letting my eyes adjust to what was there. Papers, wrapped tight in oilcloth. A metal box with rust along the seams. 2 old county maps tied with twine. And right on top, like it had been left there on purpose, a narrow black notebook with my father's handwriting across the front. I knew that handwriting anywhere. Block letters, pressed hard, like he didn't trust ink to stay unless he forced it down. For the day you can no longer hold it alone. I stared at those words longer than I should have. Not because I didn't understand them. Because I did. Too well. Damn you. I said under my breath, not sure if I meant him or myself. I picked up a notebook. It felt lighter than I expected. Worn at the edges, soft from years of being handled, then not handled at all. I flipped it open halfway, without thinking, then stopped. My father had never been a man who wrote things down for no reason. If he left this, it wasn't meant to be skimmed. It was meant to be understood. I set the notebook on my knee and reached for the oilcloth bundle first. The cloth came loose easier than I expected. Inside were deeds. Old ones. Not the copies I kept in the house, but originals. Dates going back farther than I'd ever seen in one place. Names I recognized from stories, and some I didn't. Mercer. Boone. Handwritten transfers, faded stamps, signatures that looked more like marks than names. I flipped through a few pages, then stopped when I realized what I was holding. Not just proof of ownership. Proof of how long this land had been tied to us. Longer than I had ever really let myself think about. I set the papers aside carefully. My hands were slower now. Not from age. From something else. The metal box came next. It took a second to get the latch open. Inside were smaller documents. Survey notes. Measurements. Hand-drawn diagrams that didn't look like anything I recognized at first. Not fields. Not fencing. Something else. I frowned, leaned closer, tried to make sense of the markings. Lines running under sections of land. Depth notes. Numbers written in the margins that didn't match acreage or yield or anything I'd ever tracked. What were you doing? I muttered, more to him than to myself. I set that aside too. My chest felt tighter now, not in a bad way, just different. Like I had stepped into something I hadn't meant to step into yet. Finally, I picked up the notebook again. This time, I opened it from the beginning. The first few pages weren't what I expected. Not technical, not numbers, just writing. My father's voice, but quieter than I remembered him speaking in life. First entry was dated almost 30 years back. If you're reading this, it means you waited longer than I did. I let out a small breath through my nose. That sounded like him, never saying something straight, if he could make you work for it. I kept reading. This land is not what you think it is. It never was. I didn't tell you sooner because I wasn't sure I was right, and a man has no business passing down uncertainty like it's truth. I stopped there. Read that line again. A man has no business passing down uncertainty like it's truth. That explained more than anything else ever had. Why he kept things close. Why he never talked about certain parts of the farm like other men did. Why there were places he'd walk and never explain. I turned the page. The next entries were different. Shorter. More precise. Dates. Observations. Mentions of the north pasture. The lower ridge past the old fence line. References to water, but not the way farmers talk about water. Not rain. Not irrigation. Something underground. Something measured. Something tracked over time. I felt a shift in my stomach. No, mutarad. No, that can't be it. But I kept reading anyway. There were sketches. Rough but careful. Lines drawn beneath the surface. Arrows marking flow. Notes about mineral content. Flow consistency. Changes over seasons. He'd been watching something. Studying it. Quietly. For years. And he never said a word about it to me. Not once. I flipped further ahead. The entries got more certain. Less questioning. If the surveys are right, and I believe they are, this isn't just a spring. My hand tightened on the page. This is something larger, something steady, something that does not dry when everything else does. I leaned back a little, the barn around me going quieter in a way that didn't feel natural. I knew every inch of this land, or I thought I did. I knew where the soil ran thin, where it held, where water pooled after a storm, where it disappeared in a drought. But this wasn't something you saw from the surface. I turned another page. There was a line underlined twice. Someday, someone will come looking for this. I stopped breathing for a second. Then I let out slow. What did you get yourself into? I said quietly. Or maybe the question was what he had left for me. I didn't know yet. I kept going. Toward the back, the writing changed again. Less explanation, more instruction. The rights were secured when the land was last transferred clean. Do not separate surface from what lies beneath. If you sell without knowing this, you will lose more than land. That line sat heavy, because for the first time since Marcus walked into the kitchen, I felt something shift. Not relief. Not yet. Something closer to doubt. Doubt about what I thought I understood. About what I've been holding on to. About what I might have been about to give away without even knowing it. I closed the notebook slowly and rested on my thigh. For a few seconds, I just sat there, staring at nothing, listening to the quiet, trying to put it together in a way that made sense. Underground water, I said out loud. Rights. Surveys. It didn't line up clean. Not yet, but it was enough to crack something open. Enough to make Marcus's neat little numbers feel incomplete. Not wrong, just not the whole picture. I reached for the maps next. Untied the twine. Spread one out across the floor. Old county grid. Hand markings layered over it. My father's, I realized. Not official. Personal. Tracing the same areas mentioned in the notebook. North pasture. Lower ridge. A pattern. Not random. Intentional. My heart picked up a little. Not from excitement. From something heavier. Responsibility, maybe. Or the realization that, whatever this was, it had been sitting here the whole time, and I had walked past it for years without knowing. I folded the map back carefully and set everything in front of me in a line. Notebook. Surveys. Deeds. Like laying out pieces of a story I hadn't been told. And for the first time that night, I thought about Marcus again. Not what he said. What he didn't know. He was in that house thinking he understood the problem. Thinking it was simple. Sell or don't sell. Stay or leave. But if this was real, if even part of this was real, then the decision he wanted me to make wasn't just about the farm anymore. It was about something underneath it. Something we hadn't even considered. I sat there a few seconds longer, then picked the notebook back up. Not to read more, just to hold it. You waited too long, I said quietly, not sure if I meant him or me. Then I heard the barn door creak behind me. I didn't turn right away. I already knew who it was. Dad. Marcus's voice. Tired. Careful. I looked down at the notebook in my hands, then at everything spread out in front of me. For the first time since he walked into that kitchen, I didn't feel like I was standing on the edge of something ending. I felt like I was standing at the beginning of something I didn't understand yet. You might want to see this, I said. Marcus didn't step closer right away. He stood just inside the barn, letting his eyes adjust, probably expecting to see me fixing something or just sitting there thinking like I usually did when I didn't want to finish an argument. What is it? He asked. I didn't answer him with words. I just turned the notebook so he could see the cover. He took a few steps forward then, slower now, like he wasn't sure what he was walking into. That's Grandpa's, he said. Yeah. He crouched down across from me, glanced at the papers spread out, the maps, the box. You've been keeping all this out here? No, I said. He has. Marcus picked up one of the survey pages, looked at it, frowned. What am I looking at? That's what I'm trying to figure out. He flipped it over, checked another one, then set it back down. Looks like old survey work, he said. Property lines? That's what I thought at first. I slid the notebook toward him. Read a few pages. He hesitated, then opened it somewhere in the middle. His eyes moved faster than mine had. He read like a man used to pulling information quick, not sitting with it. Halfway down the page, his brow tightened. Water, he said. That's what it looks like. He flipped back, then forward, then back again. This doesn't make sense, he muttered. Why would he track this like this? Keep reading. He did. Another minute passed. Then another. The barn stayed quiet except for the sound of him turning pages and the faint shifting of animals in the stalls behind us. Finally, he stopped. He's mapping flow. Marcus said, more to himself than to me. Not surface water. Something underneath. He looked up at me. Did you know about this? No, not even a hint. Nothing. That bothered him. I could see it. Not because of what it meant yet. Because of what it said about how little we both actually knew about this place we thought we understood. He picked up the map, spread it out across his knee, then grabbed another sheet to match it against. These lines, he said, tracing one with his finger, they're not random. He's following something. That's what I figured. Marcus leaned back a little, thinking, if this is real, he didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. I said it for him. Then we're not just talking about farmland. He let out a slow breath. No, for a second, neither of us spoke. Because if that was true, then everything from earlier, the papers, the listings, the clean numbers on the table, suddenly felt smaller than they had an hour ago. Not wrong, just incomplete. Marcus picked up the metal box again, dug deeper this time. What about this part? He said, holding up a sheet I hadn't looked at closely yet. He leaned over. It was denser than the others. More notes. References I didn't recognize. Mineral content. Marcus said quietly. These are readings. From what? From water samples, if I had to guess. He looked back at me. Your dad wasn't just watching this. He was studying it. That word sat different. Studying meant intention. Time. Purpose. He never said anything, I said. Marcus shook his head slowly. Maybe he didn't know what he had yet. Or maybe he didn't want anyone else to know. Marcus didn't answer that. He went back to the notebook, flipped toward the end this time. That's where his pace slowed. That's where mine had too. He read one page longer than the others, then another. His face changed, not dramatically, just enough to notice. Focus tightening. Jaw setting. What? I asked. He didn't answer right away. He just turned the notebook toward me and tapped a line. I read it again. The rights were secured when the land was last transferred clean. Do not separate surface from what lies beneath. I looked up. That means something to you? Marcus nodded slowly. It should. Explain it. He sat back on his heels, thinking how to say it. If what he's saying is accurate, Marcus said, then whoever owns this land doesn't just own the surface. I waited. They own whatever resource he's talking about under it too. I felt something shift in my chest. Not excitement. Not yet. Something heavier. And if we sell? I asked. He met my eyes. Then we'd be selling all of it. The barn felt smaller all of a sudden, like the walls had moved in without me noticing. Without even knowing what it is, I said. Exactly. We both sat there a second, letting that settle. This wasn't theory anymore. This was consequence. You think it's real? I asked. Marcus didn't answer right away. He picked up another sheet, checked the notes again, cross-referenced something in the notebook. I think, he said slowly, your dad believed it was real. That's not the same thing. No, he agreed. It's not. He looked around the barn, then back at the papers. But this isn't guesswork, he added. This is too detailed, too consistent. So what are we talking about? He shook his head slightly. I don't know yet. That was honest. More honest than anything he'd said in the kitchen. But I know this, he added, tapping the notebook again. This isn't something you ignore. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. No, I said quietly. It isn't. Marcus stood up, paced once, then came back. That was something he did when he was thinking hard, something he'd done since he was a kid, trying to solve problems bigger than he was ready for. If this is right, he said, then there's a reason he kept it quiet. Like what? He looked at me. Because once people know, you don't control what happens next. That made sense in a way I didn't like. You think someone else knows? I asked. I think if this has been here this long, he said, it's possible. Another pause. Or, he added, nobody ever looked close enough. That was worse somehow, because that meant we were sitting on something all this time without even knowing it. I looked back at the trunk, at everything inside it. He told me to open this if the land ever came to a last day, I said. Marcus glanced at me. What do you think he meant by that? I didn't answer right away. I thought about the kitchen, the papers, the way Marcus had said we needed to sell. I think he meant today, I said. Marcus nodded once, slow. Then maybe it's a good thing you waited. For the first time since he walked into the house, there wasn't tension in his voice. Just something quieter. Something closer to respect. Not for me, for what was in front of us. What do we do now? I asked. That question felt different now. Not defensive, not reactive. Real. Marcus looked down at the papers again, then back at me. We don't sell, he said. Not yet. I held his gaze. You sure about that? He nodded. Yeah. A beat passed. But we don't assume this saves anything either. That was the Marcus I knew. Not jumping to conclusions. Not chasing hope just because it felt better. So we check it, I said. We verify it, he corrected. Properly. Ow. He exhaled slowly. We start with records. County. Water rights. Surveys. If this was ever filed officially, there'll be a trace. I nodded. That sounded right. Solid. Grounded. And if it's not? I asked. He looked back at the notebook. Then we figure out why it wasn't. Silence again. But not the same silence as before. This one wasn't full of distance. It was full of something else. Something shared. For the first time all day, we were looking at the same problem from the same side. Marcus bent down, started gathering the papers carefully this time, not like before. No ruse. No frustration. Just focus. We'll go into town in the morning, he said. Clerk's office opens at 8. I nodded. I'll be up. He glanced at me, just for a second. I know. He stood there a moment longer, then added, quieter, Dad, if this is real. I waited. He shook his head slightly. Then we almost made a very big mistake. I looked down at the notebook in my hands. Yeah, I said. We did. He turned and headed back toward the house. This time, I didn't feel like I should call him back. I didn't feel like anything was slipping away. I stayed there in the barn a little longer, looking at the trunk, at the things my father left behind, at the pieces of something I hadn't understood until now. And for the first time since Marcus walked through that door, I didn't feel like I was standing at the end of something. I felt like I was standing right at the edge of finding out how much of this place I had never really known at all. We were in the truck before sunrise. Neither of us said much. Coffee between us, engine running rough until it warmed up, the kind of quiet that wasn't empty but wasn't comfortable either. The papers sat on the dash in a neat stack, the notebook on top. Marcus kept glancing at it like it might change if he looked long enough. I kept my eyes on the road. The town hadn't changed much. Same courthouse, same brick front, same flag out front that looked like it had seen too many winters. We parked without saying anything and went inside. The clerk's office was already open. A woman behind the counter looked up, gave us a quick nod. Morning. Marcus stepped forward before I could say anything. We need to pull some property records, he said. His voice was steady, professional, like he'd done this 100 times. I stood a step behind him, holding the notebook, feeling out of place in a room full of things I'd ignored most of my life. Address? She asked. Marcus gave it. She typed, clicked, turned her screen slightly. You're looking for current deed or historical? Both, Marcus said, and anything tied to water or mineral rights. She paused for half a second at that, then nodded slowly. Might take a bit. We'll wait. We sat at a side table while she pulled files. Marcus didn't fidget, didn't pace. Just sat there, hands folded, eyes fixed on nothing. That was new. He was always moving when something mattered. I watched him a second, then looked down at the notebook. You ever hear him talk about anything like this? I asked quietly. Marcus shook his head. No, a beat passed. You? No, he nodded once. That said enough. The clerk came back with a stack of records. Old ones mixed with newer printouts. Here's what I could find without digging into archives, she said. Anything. Older might be on microfilm. Marcus thanked her, already flipping through pages. I leaned in beside him. Most of it looked like what I expected. Ownership transfers. Boundary adjustments. Tax records. Nothing that jumped out. Then Marcus stopped. His finger tapped a line halfway down a page. There, he said. I leaned closer. It wasn't obvious. Just a clause. Small. Easy to miss if you weren't looking for it. Retained subsurface and water extraction rights. Marcus read under his breath. He looked up at me. That's not standard. What does it mean? It means, he said slowly, when this land was last transferred clean, whoever signed that made sure the rights under the land stayed with it. Not split off. I felt that settle in my chest. So it matches what he wrote. Yeah. Marcus flipped to another page, cross-checked dates. And this wasn't recent. This goes back decades. To him, I asked. Maybe before him, Marcus said. Hard to tell without going deeper. He leaned back slightly, thinking. Not excited. Not relieved. Just recalibrating. So this is real, I said. He nodded once. Parts of it are. That wasn't the same as certainty. But it wasn't doubt either. We kept going through the records. Slower now. More careful. Looking for anything that lined up with what was in the notebook. Most of it didn't. But enough did. Enough to make this something we couldn't ignore. After a while, Marcus pushed the stack back gently. We need more than this, he said. Like what? Verification, he said. Actual survey. Geological, if it comes to that. I nodded. That made sense. Practical. Solid. You know someone? I asked. He hesitated. I know people who know people. I almost smiled at that. City boy. He gave me a quick look. Not annoyed. Just tired. This isn't simple, Dad. Nothing ever is. That hung there a second. Then he said it. Not loud. Not sharp. Just honest. You should have told me you were struggling. I looked at him. I didn't think you wanted to hear it. I didn't think you'd say it. There was again. Not about the land. About us. About everything that had been left unsaid too long. I thought you left because you were done with this place, I said. I left because I didn't want to end up resenting it, he replied. There's a difference. I let that sit. Because I understood it. Maybe too late. You think I resented it? I asked. He shook his head slowly. No, he said. I think you loved it more than anything else. And sometimes it felt like there wasn't much room left for anything else. That one didn't hit like an attack. It hit like truth. The kind you don't argue with because you know exactly where it came from. Your mother didn't feel that way. I said, but it came out weaker than I meant it to. Marcus didn't push it. He just said, maybe not at first. We sat there in that quiet again. Not the same as before. Still heavy. But not sharp. Not cutting. Just real. You still want to sell? I asked after a minute. He didn't answer right away. He looked down at the papers, then at the notebook in my hands. I don't know, he said finally. That was new. Yesterday he had been sure. Certain. Now there was space in it. Doubt. That's not a no, I said. No, he agreed. It's not. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. But it's not a yes anymore either. I nodded. That was enough for now. If this turns out to be what he thought it was. Marcus started, then stopped. Then what? I asked. He looked at me. Then you weren't wrong to hold on. That caught me off guard. Not because I needed him to say it, but because I didn't expect him to. And if it isn't? I asked. He held my gaze. Then we're back to where we were. And we still have to make a decision. Fair. Honest. No easy way out. You ready for that? I asked. He let out a breath. I'm more ready for that than I was yesterday. That was probably the most I was going to get from him. We gathered the papers, thanked the clerk, and headed back out to the truck. The sun was higher now. Town starting to move. People going about their day like nothing had changed. For us, everything had. We drove back, mostly in silence again. Not because there was nothing to say, because we were both thinking too hard to say it right. Halfway home, Marcus spoke. You really didn't know? I kept my eyes on the road. No, not even if feeling something was different. I shook my head. I knew the land, I said. I didn't know what was under it. He nodded slowly. That's the part that gets me. What? You can live your whole life on something, he said, and still not know what you're actually standing on. I didn't answer, because there wasn't anything to add to that. When we pulled into the yard, things looked the same as they always had. House. Barn. Fences. Nothing about it said there was anything more to it. That was the part that felt strange now. Marcus stepped out, looked around once, then back at me. So what now, he asked. I shut the engine off. Now we find out the truth, I said. He nodded. No argument this time. No pushback. Just a quiet agreement. And for the first time since he walked into that kitchen, I didn't feel like I was trying to hold something together by myself. It took 3 weeks to get a straight answer. Not one call. Not one visit. 3 weeks of people passing us to someone else, of waiting on reports, of hearing we'll get back to you, and not knowing if they would. Marcus handled most of it. Calls, emails, setting things up. I stayed out of the way more than I was used to, which wasn't easy, but I knew enough by then to understand this wasn't something I could fix with a wrench and a long day. The man who finally came out wasn't what I expected. No suit, no polished speech, just a pickup, mud on the tires, a clipboard, and a way of walking the land like he was listening to something under it. He didn't say much the first time. Took samples, asked a few questions, checked the areas marked in the notebook, like he already had a reason to trust them. When he was done, he stood by the fence line a long minute, looking out toward the north pasture. "You been here a long time?" he asked. "My whole life," I said. He nodded once. "Funny thing," he said, almost to himself. "People think they know their land because they've walked it." He looked down at the ground, then back at me. "Sometimes they don't." That didn't sit easy. Not because it was wrong, because it was right in a way I wasn't used to hearing out loud. He didn't give us answers that day. Said he needed to run things through, check consistency, compare readings. Marcus didn't push him. Neither did I. We'd waited this long. We could wait a little longer. When the call finally came, it was early. Marcus answered it on the porch, pacing like he used to when he was younger and trying not to show he was nervous about something that mattered. I watched him from the kitchen window, watched his face change without hearing a word. When he hung up, he didn't come in right away. He stood there a second, just looking out at the yard. Then he walked in slow. "Well?" I asked. He set his phone down on the table. Took a breath. "It's real." I didn't move. Didn't say anything. "Not just a small spring," he added. "It's consistent, deep, clean, the kind of source companies look for." I let that sit. Not because I didn't understand it. Because I did, and I needed a second to feel what that meant. "So what now?" I said. Marcus gave a small, tired smile. "Now it gets complicated." That part made sense. Nothing this big ever stayed simple. The next few days moved faster than the weeks before. Calls started coming in. Not a flood. Not yet. But enough to know word had started moving. Quietly. Carefully. The kind of interest that doesn't show itself all at once. Marcus handled it better than I expected. Not pushing. Not jumping at the first offer. Asking questions I wouldn't have thought to ask. Terms. Impact. Control. Things I hadn't considered before. One evening, we sat at the same kitchen table where all this started. No papers spread out this time. Just 2 cups of coffee and the weight of a decision that wasn't hypothetical anymore. "They're offering a lease," Marcus said. "Not a sale." I nodded. "Means we keep the land." "Means we keep the land," he confirmed. "They take water. We set limits." I looked at him. "You trust that?" He shook his head slightly. "I trust that we don't rush it." "Fair. And if we don't take it?" I asked. He leaned back, thinking. "Then we figure something else out." "Like what?" He gave a half smile. "That part I'm still working on." I almost smiled back. For the first time since he came home, he didn't sound like a man with all the answers. He sounded like someone willing to stay in the question a little longer. That mattered more than I expected. "You still think we should have sold?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Just looked down at his hands. "I think," he said slowly, "we were closer to losing this place than you were willing to admit." I nodded. That was true. "And I think," he added, "I was closer to walking away from it than I should have been." That surprised me. Not because he said it, because he meant it. "You don't have to stay," I said. He looked up. "I know. This place isn't a debt you owe me." "I know that too." A pause. Then he said it. Quiet. Straight. "I'm not here because I have to be." I didn't ask him what he meant by that. I didn't need to. The way he said it told me enough. We sat there a while longer without talking. Not awkward. Not heavy. Just still. Later that week, we walked the north pasture together. Same ground I'd crossed 1,000 times without thinking about what was underneath it. Marcus stopped halfway out, looked around like he was seeing it different now. "All this time," he said, "and we had no idea." I shrugged slightly. "Your grandfather did." "Yeah," he said. "He just didn't say anything." I looked out across the land. Maybe he didn't know how. Marcus nodded once. That landed between us in a way nothing else had. Not as an excuse, just an understanding. We didn't sign anything right away. Didn't jump at the first good offer. We took our time, asked questions, made sure whatever we agreed to didn't take more than it gave back. That was Marcus's doing. The part of him that saw the world differently than I did turned out to be exactly what we needed. A few months later, we reached something that felt right. Not perfect, but real. We kept the land, set clear limits, made sure what was taken didn't cost more than it was worth. The money helped. Fixed things I've been putting off too long. Took some pressure off in ways I hadn't realized I was carrying every day. But that wasn't the part that stayed with me. The part that stayed was quieter than that. It was mornings when Marcus was already up before me. Not because he had to be, but because he chose to be. It was the way we worked without arguing about every little thing. Not because we suddenly agreed on everything, but because we understood each other better than we had before. One evening, we were sitting out by the barn, sun going down, nothing pressing that needed doing. Marcus leaned back against the fence and said, "I almost sold this place without knowing what it was." I looked out across the field. I almost lost it without knowing it either. He nodded. Funny how that works. I didn't answer, because there wasn't anything to add. After a minute, he said, "You ever think about what happens next?" "All the time," I said. "You scared of it?" I thought about that. About age. About change. About everything that comes whether you're ready or not. "Less than I was," I said. He looked over at me. "Why's that?" I took a breath. "Because I know now it doesn't all end the way you think it will." He nodded slowly. "Didn't push it. Didn't need to. The land didn't change. Not really. Same fences. Same barn. Same wind moving through the same trees. But something about it felt different now. Not because of what was under it. Because of what we finally saw in it. Not just a place to work. Not just something to hold on to. Something we understood better. Something we didn't have to defend the same way anymore. Some things you don't sell. Not because they're worth more money. Because they're the only thing left that tells you who you are when everything else starts to shift. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you figure that out before it's gone.